And I figure, since this is the historic 400th episode of After Dark, that it should get its own special acknowledgement here at the beginning. Hey, we've done 400 of these.
Yeah, let's not break our arms patting ourselves on the back, Joe.
Right, exactly.
Oh, I think I just broke my arm.
If I was paying more close attention and did my gazintas, I think it would have been like 7 weeks ago. Would have been like our 1,000th episode of doing a podcast, but then I really would have had to dig in to get the right number. But hey, 400 of these. Hey.
Yeah, and then 600 and some of the regular show.
Right.
So we're and you know what, Joe? I almost have it down.
Almost.
So, I'm gonna try less hard,
Right, just let it be natural.
Loose. You can't see me shaking it out, Joe.
I'm glad I don't.
Yeah, no.
I was thinking of a lot of ideas. I was thinking about maybe doing like a video version of this one day.
Right.
Putting up on the YouTubes or something.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. But I don't know if anybody wants to see me. I've said this before. I don't even want to see me. Right. All the mirrors in my house are covered with tinfoil like a vampire's house.
Right.
So
we've also discussed this, back when I used to leave the house for work and stuff, and I would leave the house like with shit all over me or something.
Schmutz.
And like I'd eventually, and then I get to work and somebody will point it out to me and I'm like, oh, I've been walking around for like hours with like, I don't know, like a piece of shit on my face or something, or like a big like glob of goop on my shirt. And I'd say something to April. I'm like, I don't look at myself when I leave the house. I don't look at myself, period. I go,
I avert my eyes.
Sometimes you have to double check me to make sure that I'm not embarrassing you by leaving the house,
Well, aren't you embarrassing her just by leaving the house?
I think I'm embarrassing her in general all the time.
Right. Wow. That's our jobs as men, so.
That's true.
What?
So what have you been up to this weekend?
Well, I fighting off ants, but I think I won. And not uncles and
ants.
Yeah, like ants in the yard.
Oh, in the yard.
Yeah, they started climbing the walls and they were like poking their heads in. So I ended up getting a bunch of those like little things that they walk into, they eat whatever, they take it back to the hive.
Ant traps?
Yeah, they're not. Well, I guess they're called ant traps. I thought they were like bait stands or something like that. Is the official name, and has like some liquid in them now. And they took it, and I got them a couple days ago, and they went. We've had trouble here over the years. Like we won't have ants for the longest time, and then like they'll build a nest in the yard close to the house, and then they'll come in. I'll have to go out and do the boiling water trick and get some ant traps, and they go away. But that's the one thing that I did this week, and sprinkle stuff in the yard. So I'm happy that seems to be working. And the other thing that I did was went with the fancy gentleman to Comic-Con in New Jersey.
Right, the Garden State Comic Fest.
Yes, it's not a con. They don't want to get sued. They're a fest, which is much better. In an ice rink, which was nice.
So it was nice and cold?
Yes and no. Here's the thing. Okay, so we get there. And first of all, I was thinking about paying this. I paid the Suckers premium Saturday for buying my tickets that day. They're like, oh, if you buy them online up to the midnight the day before, it's $5 cheaper. And I'm like, okay. And I went to see Thor: Love and Thunder the night before. So by the time I got home, I forgot to do it. I was like, I'm just going to pay the regular price, extra $5. And I ended up buying Adam's ticket because he drove. So I was like, for gas, whatever, here's your ticket, And I get up and I'm like, where do we go for tickets? And I'm like, they're like right there. And there was a long line outside we got there shortly before it opened. And as it's open, I'm going up for my tickets. I'm like, oh, that line over there. And I didn't know if it was for something like meeting some like Tiffany or whatever, because she was there. And I go up and I get my tickets. I'm like, all right, how much? They give them to me, and they got the little wristbands. I give Adam his. I put mine on. He puts his on. And I'm like, now what? And they're like, oh, you can go in. I'm like, well, what's that line for? And they're like, that's the line for everybody who paid in advance and saved $1. Now we have to check all their credentials as they're coming in. And I'm like, well, that's bullshit. I'm glad I could just go in. Like, they prepaid, and I'm in before all of them, except the VIP people who, like, got in an hour or a half hour early. So that was cool. But then you go in, and they have 2 rooms. One was called the hero room, and then the other one was called the villain room, which, whatever, that's cool. You go in the hero one, and it's where if they're playing hockey or whatever, they have bleachers, and they have a bunch of people in it, and, tables and vendors. And you're like, okay, this is an ice rink, but it's not being used. So I'm in there, and I walk all the way around, and me and Adam split up. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go, it's getting hot in here. I'm like, it's really hot. I'm going to go over in the villains room. And I go over to the villains room, and the villains room is, I guess, where, like, you can ice skate, and, like, they do stuff, whatever. Hockey. It's a much smaller room, doesn't have bleachers. But there's actual ice under your feet with these blocks that they put in that have, like, grooves so they don't move, if you get my meaning.
Yeah.
So it's literally 30 degrees cooler in this room. I mean, you're standing on ice with these insulated things. I was in my glory in the villain room, Joe. I was like, I could lay down on the floor in here. It's so cool. So yes, one of them was actually on top of ice with a buffer.
No hockey people there. There was no, like, obviously it was an off day so they could have the comic book convention. It wasn't like, we got to be out of here we got to close by X so that the Rangers can play the Avalanche or those,
right, the Canucks
teams.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
No, there wasn't that. So it was set up, and they were going to be there the next day. So all that was done. I got in. I was there to meet a certain artist and get a piece. And there was, like, a whole bunch of, like, weird, like, talk. Like, I was DMing him in tweets. Like, I was like, what do I got to do? He's like, oh, these are my price lists. What do you want? I told him the character. I told him what size I wanted because he had different sizes. And he's like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, do you want money? He's like, no, I'd rather cash. No PayPal. He's like, just come to the show and we'll get you done. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, I only have, like, because I knew me and Adam weren't staying the whole day. Like, even I've been to this con before, and it was that now. Last time I was there, they didn't have the villain room set up, so I thought it would be even smaller. I'm like, there's no way I'm staying today. So I'm like, I'm only gonna be there a half a day. I don't know how fast you are. Is this a problem? He's like, no problem. So we get there. I'm like, all right, I'm going straight to him so he could start my piece so he can get it done and be done. I walk up. I'm like, oh. You told me to get here early, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, so you can get what you want. And I'm like, oh, I want this character. And he's like, oh, I did that already. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I just do pre-done pieces. If you didn't show up, it would go with the 10, 15 other pre-done pieces I have, and I'd sell it. And I'm like, okay. He's like, here you go. I walk up to Adam. I'm like, I'm ready to leave whenever you are. He's like, I want to look around. I said, I am too. But
I assume, not to interrupt you, but I assumed when you were contacting this guy ahead of time, on the social medias, that he was going to have that thing done for you before he even got to the convention.
Really?
As soon as you were telling me that, I'm like, oh, I don't even know who this artist is. You even told me. I'm sure it was whatever is going to be mentioned for the Todd's Art Attack.
Not the one we just did, but next week.
And you don't want to give it away just yet?
Right. I don't want to lay them all out. You know what I mean?
But if he's going through the process of actually speaking to you ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Now, okay, so I'll throw this caveat in there. Looking at the guest list, I knew Kevin McGuire wasn't going to be in there, and I knew it wasn't him.
Right.
And I know how he is. Bad.
Yeah.
So I assumed whoever this person is, I was giving them the benefit of the doubt that they were not Kevin McGuire. And if they're going through the trouble, like I said, of getting in touch with you ahead of time, working out who you want on what sort of paper, what size, how much, how the transaction's going to go down, that, like, I don't know what his day job is, but I'm assuming that his day job is making those drawings.
Yeah, pretty much. So that,
and then I looked that he has the backup plan. It's like, if you stiff me, it was going to just go in with the other, like, 15 or 20 ones that I got stiffed on in the past.
Oh, you mean with Kevin?
No, with this guy.
Oh, this guy. I've never, now, to tell you the truth, I'm all caught up. No one, now, I wouldn't say no one doesn't owe me art, but no one owes me art that isn't what's the word I'm looking for? Like up to date and in contact. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's not more than a year, if that makes any sense, on whatever needs to be done. So, but this guy, like I said, yeah, it kind of shocked me because I thought he would do it that way, like prepay, like he'd want me to prepay, which a lot of them do if they're going to have it done in advance so I don't, screw them over. But that being said, it all worked out, got it done fast, and we were able to walk around the show. I almost bought a figure that I wanted. It was a Marvel Legends, but the guy was like, "Oh, like," I'm like, "How much for the Marvel Legends?" I'm like, "Are they like in this this section of your booth?" I'm like, "Are they all the same, or like do you have them priced as marked?" He's like, "No, they're all the same. They're priced to move. I'm having a sale on all those Marvel Legends, $30 a piece." And I'm like, "That's not a sale. That's a markup. I can go get those off of, I can go get the one I want right now off of Amazon for like $6 cheaper and free shipping."
Okay.
And I'm like, no, it's not happening. Or actually, someone talked me out of it. So, and I like.
I wonder who that could have been.
It was probably a stranger. It was a stranger. So, that was pretty much the only thing that I had interest in. I went looking for back issues. And it was funny because Adam was with me occasionally, and I'd come up to a table, and I'd start rummaging through it with my fingers, and I'm like, "They've broken my rule." And the first time Adam's like, "What rule?" I said, "You ain't in alphabetical order? I don't even stop to look." And he's like, "Oh, okay." So we go to another table. I'm like, "They broke my rule." He's like, "Alphabetical order?" I'm like, "Yep." And we went to a couple, and I'm like, there was nothing really. Like there was only one or two good booths that had everything in order and everything, but everything literally is 1990 to like now, like new, like mostly new stuff. And I'm like, new stuff now, I would have had it, and 90s stuff I was collecting then. So like I don't need it. So nobody had any good older books, which what I was looking for was all-star westerns. And weird Western tales from the 70s and 80s. And nobody had any Western books. So
that's crazy because usually at a convention, there'll always be like that one straggler who just has old books. It's just like 50s, 60s, and 70s is all I have,
You know what? This was, imagine the Scranton Con with retailers, but on a bigger venue.
Okay.
And then having some decent, like if you have Walt Simonson and Scott Collins and Bart Sears, at least you have, you know what I mean? You have three names right off the bat. And Tom Mandrake, 4 names. Louis Simonson, 5 names. I was like, okay, the talent's there. But the retailers were all the same. They're the type of like, my stuff's good and I want top dollar for it. And I'm like, you have quarter books and you have today's books. Like, I can go get those from a comic shop right now. So I'm good. So we stayed about, I don't know, maybe 2 hours. Adam like really looked around. He was looking for stuff. And then we ski-daddled on our way home, and we decided to comic safari and doll safari along the way home. So,
well, Adam can tell the tales of his doll safaris over on At Odds this week.
Right.
But you guys stopped at like random comic shops on the way home?
Yes, we stopped at, I'm going to say either way. One, we stopped at, like I said, he'll tell this, like all the like Targets and Walmarts along the way. And then there was a toy shop along the way. And one, I want to say, was there 2 comic shops? 2 comic shops along the way? Well, at least definitely one. But we stopped in this place called the Toy Chest, which was interesting, which was a house. It was literally a house. But like I will say this, an immaculate house. Like nicer than like my house, like brand new painted, beautiful rugs, like, but the house from front to back to upstairs was all toys. And it was in Hope, New Jersey. And so I'm like walking through the door and I'm like, I wonder if this guy's going to know the $100 Vansky and Fig Daddy Cool are coming to look around. Right? So he was like, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you looking for?" And I'm like, "I'm just looking." And he tried like really talking to us, and he was like super Jersey, and then a little bit pushy. And like when we left, we were like, yeah, like you have all new figures, but no like older stuff or classic stuff or anything, like a little bit. You just have a little bit. And we're like, nah, there's nothing really here for us. But we're lucky we made it because he's going on summer hiatus for 2 to 3 weeks. So the next day he was not going to be open. So we just made it.
You just made it to look at his nothing.
Yes. Like there was nothing that I was interested in. And he was asking me what I liked. And I was like, oh, I like NECA figures that are only the Mirage Turtles. He had no idea what I was talking about. But I narrowed it down enough so he wasn't going to hassle me. And Adam was no selling him the whole time. Like, I don't even want to like, I'm looking, don't even acknowledge me because there's nothing here that I want. And I don't feel like small chit chat. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to throw Adam under the bus and say he's the big toy collector. So we left, but I like the idea of the shop, if that makes any sense. That he's trying, and it was kind of cool. So I like that. And then we stopped. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2, but I will say this: stopping at those 2 comic shops made me realize how spoiled me and you are, Joe. I walked into these comic shops, and now I know that, like, if I ever do go safaring ever again, that I do not need to stop at these 2 shops, because especially the one was as big as Dave's toy room at the biggest.
Okay.
And it had only shelves with new stuff, a couple of toys. I was like, oh, there's a Starlight figure here from the boys that I'm interested in, but I didn't buy it because they didn't have the Homelander one. And there was gaming in the back with tables, and you couldn't get down all the rows because of the gamers.
Gotcha.
And then I'm just gonna say it smelled like farts in the back of the shop. They were the game. I was like, I walked back. I'm like, did somebody shit themselves back here?
Oh.
And I'm like, I'm going. And the guy's like, do you need anything? I'm like, no, I was looking for back issues. And you don't have a back issue that I want. He had 3-4 short boxes outside of back issues. But once again, they were X amount of
like they were books from like the last 2 years.
Yes, or 5 years at the most. I was like, I don't want any of this. And I got to hear one of the things that I love in any comic shop, even though it was a small one. Hey, is this free? And I laughed at that. I was like, nobody said I still got them in the plastic. So that happened. So like we left there. Adam was maybe going to buy a Funko, but it wasn't on his I needed it badly list. So, or whatever his rules are. I don't know. So we left that one, and we kind of went to another one, and it was the same way, but it didn't smell of farts. And then we went home, and I was just like, thank God we have a shop, like he doesn't have all the back issues in the world, but he's got something, and I can move around, and there isn't people stinking up the joint often, Well,
so. I think that's the decision that our store made, that a lot of the other stores that have come and gone in our area, is that our store just recently, and I say recently, has kind of expanded that toy section when he got the more room. Like, he's always had toys, but now he's got like a whole toy section, right?
Right.
But there's no gaming at our shop,
Other than you can order gaming supplies that Diamond has.
Right, you can order stuff, and even was that?
I was gonna say, and occasionally he'll stock like what you would call impulse buys at the counter. Like he's like, here's a box of Magic cards. What I mean? Like,
there's always been the one box of Magic cards, always, right?
Right.
And in the last like 2 months, there's the box of Magic cards and the box of Pokemon cards.
Right.
How do I know? Because if my kid comes with me, he's like, "Oh, Dad, can I get a thing of Pokemon cards?" And I'm like, "Yeah, throw it in the bag."
He's got you.
He's got me. But there's very little gaming displayed, and there's no gaming taking place in the shop.
And he's always had that stance because he knows what it does. It doesn't help you.
Well, I could make the argument that it's good to diversify, but I would say that Dave's longevity and outlasting everyone else, and they all had gaming happening at their stores, and Dave has not had gaming ever happen at any of his stores, and he's the last one standing, that the proof is there that Dave is right.
Right. Well, I've always said this. I will not. The shop we go to, Comics on the Green, like they knew what they were doing. They didn't just diversify. Like you said, like I'll dabble. I'll be like, I'll get you what you want, but that's how. Like, focus on what you're good at and like what you'll do. And he focused on the comics. I always was like, that was a good idea. I remember around the corner, once again, this one didn't smell like farts, but the one that was like in the hipster section of Scranton, over by the Bog and the barber shop, they had a gamer there that I found out later that they have a candle for when he comes in to burn it because he stunk.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, he has his own candle? Like, all right, there's a couple people who've come in the shop who buy comics, and maybe they're not the most nice smelling people in the world, but like you're also not hanging out and staying. And the other thing is like, oh well, they say you can have these gaming people and you could like you can have your gaming night, but you have to buy my cards that night or do whatever. Yeah, that's all great, but when you have a dedicated gaming store 10 miles away in Dixon, don't try to compete with that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, do what you do, they'll do what they do. And I don't know. I haven't been in that gaming store since, all joking aside, we started this podcast, because I went to see you one night in there while you were doing Hero Clicks to talk about the podcast. And I don't know, maybe they dabble in comics and that's good for them.
Yeah, there are a lot of new releases stuff
and
little to no back issue stuff.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I remember when.
But that's the thing. They're not there anymore. They're done.
No, there's still a gaming store there.
Where?
The one on Main Street in Dixon?
Okay. So that one, I was thinking of another one. Okay. So we were going there to play Pokemon pre-pandemic.
Right.
And then during the pandemic, there was some unpleasantness that happened at that store.
I heard rumors, but...
So I don't know if that store is still there, but they did lose a good chunk of their clientele.
Okay, we'll discuss off there, because I ain't getting sued over discussion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just saying that there was a bunch of different groups. They did as much as they did like Pokemon or Magic or whatever it is, like their big money was like Warhammer.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was some sort of something that happened with the Warhammer people, and all the Warhammer people left. And then that sowed the seeds of dissent of like, well, if all the Warhammer people left, then maybe there's something wrong with the store. And like kind of everybody else went to different, like the Magic people went over here. The Pokemon people went over here. The D&D people went over there.
Right. Whatever. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So we have a decent comic shop. And I basically, other than the piece of art, I struck out on everything. And I don't think Adam, well, he'll tell you about his stories along the way.
Yeah, I'll get Adam's information from Adam. I'll leave you alone. Not you. You don't need to tell me Adam's stories.
Right.
So I'm home alone, just like the little boy in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
April and Asa are camping from Sunday of this week to I think they come home Friday afternoon.
Okay.
So it's just been me here by myself. I'm lonely, but I have time to do whatever I want.
It's a good lonely.
It's a good lonely.
Because it's not going to be forever.
Right. And I was using this time of not having human interaction to watch the current season of Stranger Things.
Are you enjoying it?
Okay, so I'm up to episode 4. I literally almost finished it before we started recording.
Right.
As I lamented to Todd, I'd canceled my Netflix subscription because we were watching less and less stuff on Netflix.
Right.
So I had to acquire Stranger Things by legal means, I assure you.
Sure.
And you pull up the episode, and the episode says like an hour 17, an hour 7, an hour this, an hour that. And I know the season finale is like 6 hours long or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm so used to watching stuff like The Boys or any of the Disney Plus shows where like Miss Marvel this week, it says it's like 41 minutes, but it's actually only like 34 minutes because there's like 7 minutes of credits at the end.
Right.
Whereas with the episodes of Stranger Things, if it says an hour 17, it's an hour 16:20 of content, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They're not fucking around. They're like getting in as much as they can. There was no editing with this season. It was 9 episodes at an hour plus each episode, and then the last 2 episodes are 2 hours plus. So if I do my gazintas correctly, that's 7. Let's round that up to 8. That's over 12 hours of a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, crammed into 9 episodes or whatever it is. So my thoughts so far is I like it because I like the previous seasons, you know.
Right.
And again, I'm not gonna give too many spoilers, but I did a good job of avoiding much of this.
Right.
Like I'll just say, and I feel comfortable in saying this. So you would see like teaser clips or a trailer or whatever it is. And you would see the bit. And I knew nothing about the season going in. I didn't read nothing. I didn't follow nothing. I knew nothing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bit in the trailer where Max like floats up into the sky, you know?
Right. Right.
And I see that in the trailer and I'm like postulating, I'm like, oh, is that like, does she have powers or something? Right.
Right.
And I get to the episode 4 where I see what's going on with that. I'm like, she doesn't have powers. Right.
Right.
I like Max a lot. Max and Dustin are probably still my 2 favorite characters in the show.
Right.
Is it Steve who is like the weird stoner guy that has like all a bunch of real world problems?
He's the one who's hanging out with the pizza guy.
Yes.
Okay, I think it is Steve. I forget him. Both of the ones that dated what's her face are I forget the names, but go ahead.
So he's looking rough.
Mm-hmm.
For new characters, I don't like the stoner pizza guy because it's very obviously a wig. And
Brochachos!
It's a really bad wig.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the Eddie, what's his name?
Eddie Munson, named after Eddie Van Halen.
Eddie Munson. So I think, and I don't know who the actor is. I didn't look up who he was or whatever. I think he's too cute to be playing like the freak nerd weirdo of the town.
You mean the heavy metal guy?
Yeah. Like he's too cute. He's too cute for you, you know?
Right.
They should have just got someone who's like a little bit more weirder. Like the rest of the cast, except for Lucas, like the male cast, all look like weirdos. They look like nerds. They look like losers. Mm-hmm. Lucas has really grown into himself. He's a very attractive young man.
Yep.
I like his subplot, and my biggest problem with the show, and this is my problem with like pretty much all 80s themed media, whether it's like throwback media like this,
right,
or stuff that actually happened in the 80s and we were supposed to consume it at that time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So there's the bit at the roller rink with 11, okay?
Yeah.
Where the bad girl and her crew stage an elaborate thing with employees of the roller rink. They're involved, okay?
Right.
Where they get a whole thing and they isolate her on the thing and they like physically assault her multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Like they push her down and they're tripping her and they're throwing shit on her, right? And they're videotaping it as well. So there's all video proof of this. 1986 video proof of this. And then, okay, maybe Elle crossed a line by jamming a skate into the girl's face.
Right.
I would like to think that she was playing tribute to her favorite Don Rickles joke of put skates on your face and skate.
Right.
But she like gave her a grade 2 concussion and literally ripped a hole that was like 2 inches deep in her head.
Yep.
And okay, so that's retaliation. That's very clearly what, maybe, like I said, Elle took it too far. But then this girl takes it too far and Elle just gets arrested. Like, they just come and arrest a minor. We have a warrant for this minor's, whatever. And, like, obviously they're all stupid kids. And, like, it's a thing where, like, oh, if I just talk to my friends, we could figure this out. And then it won't be 9 episodes long and an hour plus each with a 2.5-hour season finale. But, like, adults do that in The Flash. And that's kind of why I got sick of The Flash,
Right.
We're all supposed to be friends and we're all supposed to share whatever it is. And granted, by the time it gets to episode 4 and like Will and what the fuck's his name?
Mike.
Will and Mike are kind of sharing and talking about everything and like letting their feelings be known. And then Lucas and Max get to have their moment. And that's kind of like what helps Max a little bit. And obviously you have to have that establishing stuff. But always those scenes, watching them now as an adult, watching those scenes in 80s movies or 80s themed stuff, just pisses me off so much. Because that's just as unrealistic as the man from our Dungeons and Dragons game is now the conduit to the Upside Down. I believe that more than I believe that somebody would have, like, nobody would have said, like, hey, bad girl orchestrated this whole thing, got the bill, like, okay, now granted, Winona Ryder's on a fucking plane to Alaska, so there's not really much that she could do right now. And she's got a whole other thing, and I don't know, like that storyline's gonna come back around and like fit into everything, but like right now that seems like that could have been like the web only series or something that's not part of the main series.
Right, you'll get there.
And I'll get there, right? But right now it just feels like, get back to the fucking monsters, right?
Yeah. You need to have more fun while watching TV shows, man.
I do. Okay,
no, you don't. You don't. I swear to God, I think you sit on the couch, literally like Mr. Burns, with your hands, fingers touching, like, what am I going to rally against in this episode?
No, so it's not like I'm looking for things. Like we watched Goonies this weekend before April and Asa went to camp, right?
Right.
And I really enjoyed Goonies. It was a lovely movie to revisit. But then there's the part at the end where like the kids are there and it's like, oh, it's the last day, you have to sign your property away and like we're going to tear your houses down or whatever it is, right? And I get it. I do. It's like why you're like putting this stuff over, and as like the evil dad is saying this to Sean Astin and Thanos' dad, you've got the jock son who's just there like the crony, be like, yeah, you better sign it, yeah, and I'm just like, there's fucking 5 minutes left in the movie, guys. Why? You know what I mean? Like we don't really need to hammer home that he's the jerk off,
Right, like, but then in the same moment, aren't you the one who's like, get a body bag? You love that scene, don't you?
It's a funny quote. But...
Oh, it's a funny quote, but it's you're killing me. You're killing me.
Now, I will say this, to throw things into... listen, positive, right? So watch the movie. Movie's a lot of fun. And then on the bonus, because I have a DVD, I'm an old man, I see on the bonus features on the DVD... is the video, the Cyndi Lauper Goonies video, right?
You didn't have an audio tape to do the commentary?
No. But do you remember the video for the Goonies thing with Cyndi Lauper?
No.
Was that a yes or a no?
No, I do not remember that. Did it have Lou Albano in it somewhere?
Todd, not only does it have Lou Albano in it, it's got Iron Sheik, it's got Nikolai Volkov, it's got Classy Freddie Blassie. It's got Wendy Richter. It's got Fabulous Moolah. It's got Andre the Giant, spoilers. And it's got Roddy Piper in it. And, like, you watch the first minute of this, and you have, by proxy, done whatever drugs they have done. Because that's how, like, fucking just trippy it is, okay? So the video goes, and like Roddy Piper's there to foreclose on Cindy's family's gas station, and Cindy moves a picture, and there's a thing there, and it takes her to the underground that they're in the Goonies, right? Mm-hmm. And the kids are in the video, except for like the one girl isn't. Like she's like, nah, I'm too good to be in a fucking music video, right?
Right.
And they're all just wearing like their normal clothes that they wore in the movie, but they all just have white Goonies t-shirts on over them.
Okay.
And it's filmed on the same sets that the movie was. Okay.
Right, but it's probably filmed on videotape and not filmed.
Okay.
So it looks completely different.
Oh my God. And then they intercut like, you know, and that's how they would use, like, if you remember music videos for like a song that was in a movie, during the musical break, you would get clips from the movie in the music video, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have the bit where like Roddy Piper and Iron Sheik are definitely not coked out of their mind, dancing around on like dressed as pirates on the ship. And then we intercut to scenes from the movie, and then we see the ship, and we see the thing where the water rushes through, and we see this, and them going down the slide and everything else like that. And then we cut back to the video, and like, here's all those same things that we just saw in those clips of the movie. And everything just looks off because it's shot, you know, for a music video as opposed to on film by Steven Spielberg and Christopher Columbus and by professionals and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, oh, that's just so, like, that's something like as a 8-year-old kid you don't pick up on, but as a 45-year-old man, you're just like, oh, look at that. It just, things are looking different. It's the same exact shot. It's the same exact people. It's just shot with a different camera, different film stock, different whatever.
No, I'm with you on that, because to bring it around to a topic I know you love, back when I used to watch like the Doctor Who's in like the 70s, like they were filming it on film at times, and then like anything in the studio was shot on videotape. And like even as a kid watching, I'm like, I didn't know what it was, but it would be like, oh, this looks so cool now, and then it looks so like makeshift. It looks so like fake, and you're like, okay, it's all this stuff shot on videotape, and then to save money they just shot like more and more on videotape, and there's very few like whole episodes on film because they couldn't do video on scene. In the studio, yes, and it was like, and you'd go back and forth, I'd be like, wow, just, and then like later on when they try to restore it, you could high def the film, so you'd be getting these series like in Blu-ray where they do the film, but then the video was still like whatever, you know, like it wasn't 780, you know what I mean? So it was bizarre to see. So I totally get like it going back and forth. Ugh.
But again, it was a pleasant surprise. My kid enjoyed the movie. You know, he's always very apprehensive because it was playing at the FM Kirby Center.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to go and take him to see it on the big screen and everything. And he was like, nah, dragging his ass. So my wife is just like, fuck it. We're home. If we're not going to the movie to watch it, we're going to watch it here tonight. He's like, all right, fine. And he loved it. He was cracking himself up. He loved it. He thought it was cool.
Right. And now he'll never have that experience on the big screen.
That's okay. You know, it's his, you know, we give him enough opportunities to have these cool experiences, and it's up to him. You know, if you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. I can't force him to do it. But if he's in my house, I'm like, we're going to fucking watch this movie, you know, sit down and watch the movie.
There you go. And I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but I don't care what your thing of Eddie Munson is. Eddie Munson is the goddamn coolest in season 4 of Stranger Things.
No, listen,
even if he is too cute, even if he is too cute for you.
He has very soft, lovable doe eyes. Like,
but I know you've seen this part where he's selling the drugs at the picnic table.
Yeah.
To the girl. I absolutely fell in love with the character right there. Because I thought he was going to be like, they were going to go like, you know, like when you talk about 80s movies, he was going to be the straight up metal guy who's just, you know, like everything you've seen in the metal movies. They don't give him a lot of, you know, soft edges, like you said. And then he turned out to be like a lot of guys I knew in high school. You know, he totally reminds me of a guy I knew who we called Creature. That was his nickname. And other than Creature, was a little dumber. He was pretty much that character.
Did he have beautiful, soft doe eyes?
Kind of.
Kind of.
And long flowing locks like Eddie did. So
yeah, but not a wig.
Totally real.
Not a wig like the Pizza Man, right?
No. And I don't know where you are yet because there is one wig that I want to talk about. But
okay. And episode 4. I have like 5 minutes less left of actual running time. Oh, and again, I know that you're always like, Joe just watches things to. No, I don't want to hate watch anything. Believe me, I have so little time to watch things for my own whatever that's not for this podcast or for At Odds or for some other thing. It's just like something that I can just like sit back, relax, and watch. So little time to do that. I'm not going to purposely go out of my way and hate something, but I'm going to notice things. I'm going to remark on things.
See, I don't think you go out of your way to hate watch.
No.
I think you go out of your way to hate things that you love watching.
No.
Oh, yes. Like this thing here in this multi-million-dollar movie, this little CGI effect is a bit sketchy. I'm like, oh my God.
It's not that. So it's not like I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see the shitty CGI in this, right?
No.
But when there's a piece of shitty CGI in something where 95% of the movie is like beautiful and I'm buying into your nonsense and whatever it is, and then just like, you could have took a little bit more time on just this scene right here that sticks out like a sore thumb. And maybe we've already talked about it, or maybe we're going to talk about it on the main show. Who knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. And it's just like, I wish I didn't have that. I hate to say that it's a hypervigilance.
Yes.
But it's when something is so noticeably out of place, I can't help but be like, oh, I'll ignore that. The special effects guy was probably sleepy that day, so that's why it looks shitty. I'll be just like, oh, that was a weird choice, you know?
See, I'll see it, and I'll be like, oh, there's nothing there. And then, I'm like, maybe I could kind of see it now that Joe mentioned it, but I'm just going to agree with him so we can move on.
Mm-hmm.
Listen,
this is why we have these conversations. But so then we see him. They talk about him in the first couple episodes, but we see him in episode 4. Victor Creel.
Okay.
He's the guy that they said like, oh, he killed his family and everything else like that. But then the whole rib is like, no, he didn't. But nobody believes him. And maybe he's the one that first saw this Vecna or whatever, right?
Right.
And then they go to see him, and I'm like, ooh, we're getting like a real Hannibal Lecter vibe as they're taking him down to the thing, you know? And they're getting all the...
Sorry, they totally stole like lines from...
absolutely. And like, I'm not going to be like, yeah, they stole that from Silence of the Lambs. I'm like, ooh, I get Silence of the Lambs vibes. I'm like, I'm here, I'm with it. And then I hear his voice.
Mm-hmm.
And just hearing his voice, I marked out because I'm like, oh, I know who that is, and I didn't have this spoiled on me. Holy shit, you know?
Yep.
So that was an awesome moment. The special effects on him are awesome.
Yeah, I'm not sure what was sticking out of his eye, though.
Uh-huh.
It looked like I don't know, lint.
Whatever it is, they do like a lot of like lingering close-ups of him in the dark, but his face like completely well lit, you know?
No, I got you.
So, like, if there's a flaw in those effects, you're going to see them. And, like, I'm not seeing no flaws. I'm like, that looks cool as hell, you know?
Okay, and this won't be a spoiler, but at some point you do see Vecna. Have you seen Vecna yet?
Yeah, we see him a bunch of times.
Okay, Joe, it's been a while. I finished all 9 episodes.
Okay.
I don't know. And this is why I don't do, like when they drop a bunch in a row. Because I don't know where we're at. I didn't know if you had seen Vecna, because Vecna is all it's all standard effects.
It's all practical effects.
Practical effects, except for any tendrils. You know what I mean? Like he has I don't know if you've seen those, but he has like tendrils that'll go out and wrap around things. They're like, the tendrils are completely CGI, but the whole suit is practical. And I was like, that looks awesome.
Now, and again, being a horror guy, being an effects guy, being a whatever, like there's bits where he's there and then he'll do a thing where he makes his hand, like the fingers on his hands grow bigger.
Mm-hmm.
or he'll use his finger to like summon the tendrils to grab people or whatever.
Right.
And like obviously they're CGIing his hand and his finger to make the finger grow and summon the whatevers. But the practical effects, and again, I could nitpick on like the close-up shots of him, and I'm like, okay, I can see it's a guy in makeup, and that's awesome that I can see that it's a guy in makeup. And I think right before the season came out, they just kind of put out an out of context like not stop motion, but like fast motion thing of them doing the full body practical effect for that guy, like putting him in the suit, binding all the things, painting all the things, like that's what he had to go through every day, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Time lapse.
I got you. Yes.
So I'm just like, oh well, like I saw that, no context. It was before I watched any of the episodes. It was, I think, even before the first episode dropped, and I'm like, oh, that's probably just like a random thing that's in there, right?
Right.
Not knowing that, okay, that's going to be the main thing that's in there, but it's still really cool. I'm a sucker for practical effects, and it's not that I don't like CGI. I like CGI as like a modifier or enhancer for practical effects. But when everything is CGI,
nothing CGI.
But so even still, like in this episode that I'm watching, Max is in there and she's kind of in that area the longest, like the upside down or whatever it is where Vecna is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's bits where she's walking around on like things that look like little skulls and they pop and like bugs and shit crawl out of them and stuff. But because the way that everything is lit in that like weird reddish, blackish, whatever,
it works.
Because it's all CGI, it doesn't look shitty.
Right. Now, what was your take on when Vecna was breaking the bones of the kids?
I love it.
I'm going to say, because that's one of them that you kind of have to do CGI on. I think you could do practical with it. But like when the jaw, like when the girl, like when her jaw moved and her eyes went back in her head and all her bones were snapping, I was like, man, I don't remember Stranger Things being this, like, you know what I mean? Like it was dark and it would get creepy, but that kind of took me like back when they did the first thing with the cheerleader. And I was like, but I'm digging it because it's not too nasty to make me run from the room as I would, but
right. And anytime that I watch something that has any sort of like horror or violence or graphic whatever element to it, and I know it's something that you watch or watched,
mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, how's Todd dealing with this, you know?
Yep, I'm glad you worried about me, but I actually enjoyed that. Like I had to look away a few times, but I was like, okay, this is actually a well done, effect. So
yeah.
And Winona Ryder's always awesome. But
well, of course, come on. All right, I think that's enough for this, huh?
Sure, I think that's enough time to figure out if the poll's done or not, but okay.
Oh, that's not what I was killing time for, because by the time that we got to it on the main show anyway, it would have been over anyway.
Right.
Because I said it to end for 9,
No, I know.
All right, so hey, thanks everyone. It was an extra long After Dark. It's our special 400th episode, so I hope it was a lot of content, that you enjoyed it. And, patreon.com/longboxheroes. Maybe you're a $5 a month person. That means you got this before the main show and you get to listen to things in the correct listening order. And I don't mention it a bunch here on After Dark, but you could also help us out over at longboxheroes.com. Clicking on the Amazon banner. It's Prime Day, maybe, if you're still listening to this, maybe not. Make any and all of your purchases through the Amazon click-through. Amazon call it an advertising fee. I call it the thing that makes Todd happy at the end of the month when he gets his cut of the fucking money.
Yeah.
Some of the notable purchases through the Amazon click-through this week include vibrating butt plug, silicone rechargeable anal vibrator with remote control, 6 vibration modes, waterproof anal sex toy for men, women, and couples.
How does a couple share it?
You know what? I could look at the picture to see if it's like 2 ends,
Right.
But typically when I pull up something like that on my work computer, even though I work from home, I real quick get off it,
Right.
Just in case.
Well, you really need to get off the butt plug quick. I get it.
Right. So thanks to anyone and everyone who makes any and all of the purchases through the Amazon click-through, whether it be this week, next week, last month, or last whenever. Yeah, and I think there's no better way to close out the episode because you ain't topping that or bottoming that. I don't know the vernacular. Bye, everyone.
You're listening to the soon-to-be-named network, the Lamborghini of Podcast Network.